Yeah, so my name is Mari Keskikorsu, and I actually thought that I won't make a presentation about my work, or maybe a little bit, but not too much. But this is, I think, this is a continuation from Christina and Osa.
I'm here.
Yeah, and in a way that you are also kind of. In some ways asking help from the other, and in many ways I'm also doing the same, and but I think my perspective is more maybe to also to imagine, because if we can't imagine something it can't happen. So that's kind of the idea behind. But how can we imagine ourselves in a connection with some other entity in a kind of like an equal level, in order to start not imagining everything as a resource. This is also about how can we listen to the other voices and how they are heard. And so basically we are now going to listen to a message from alpacas. Alpacas are these woolly animals, other animals who have been living with human beings for thousands and thousands of years, but they haven't changed a lot. There's only two types of alpacas, and the only difference in between those two types is that the other one has a curly hair. So they maybe know something about us, I would say. So what I did was that I introduced to an alpaca herd, which is the biggest alpaca herd in Finland. I introduced to them this paper, which is scientific consensus of the problems of humankind in 21st century, and I guess we are all quite aware of these challenges, which are like climate disruption and loss of biodiversity and extinction and human population growth and our consumer patterns. So these problems were then presented to the alpacas, and I was interested in what do they think about them. And I had also help from another human being who is Maikku Kostiainen, and she is a professional animal communicator who does intuitive telepathic communication. So with that you maybe get a little bit of mix here, like this. And I'm really hoping that this works. So let's test if it works.
We alpacas think as a herd, but we are all individuals. Every alpaca has their own personality. Our age is only defined by how far away we are from our original roots. The oldest one in the herd is the one who's the closest to our origins, no matter how many generations have passed or how many years we have been away from our roots, even if we are born to a faraway place like many of us are. The consciousness is not defined by time or by the place you're born. Everyone has a possibility to gain as deep levels of consciousness as possible but it requires will, silence and studying. We don't study because we carry all the consciousness with us, as we have always done. People learn from people, and over the years the knowledge changes. People have a broken telephone. The knowledge you got from your ancestors and that you pass on to your children has changed completely. Everything has changed. It only takes a couple of generations and the heritage is lost. For us alpacas it's very different. Nothing changes. The knowledge never disappears when it's passed on from generation to generation. People are masters in forgetting. You only remember what serves your needs. This is not a judgment, just a statement. We realize this is how it is, and it's very simple. It's up to you if you need to change. Any one of you can change anything at any time. We are not saying you should change or do anything. You do as you see the best, always. We only want to share our perspective, and you are free to do anything you want with that knowledge. All the questions you have are no questions to us, but for us they are very clear. We know that it's too late for humans to change certain things. The evolution has developed, and we are in the same train that can't be stopped anymore. Some of you want to change your life, and some even want to change the whole world. We wish every human would want to change only their own life. This is the only way the world or anything in it can change. We have seen how the world changes. We clearly see its constant, astonishing speed. This is because our consciousness is and has always been the same. We repeat this message to reach through to you. We don't change our eating habits or create pollution any more than we did 1,000 years ago. But look at the people. Humans create more waste than ever today. Everything in your lives has changed, from nutrition to housing and everything in between. You drown the planet with your actions, and this concerns each and every one of you. The one of you that acts differently and tries to live a life of awareness judges those whose consciousness is not at the same level. This is as doomed to fail as the fact that you try to change each other's with force. Before the last person's level of consciousness has changed, nothing changes in your world. The difference in the level of consciousness is the same as lack of love or faith. One can have faith in that everything is like it should be. Just now, in this moment, everything is perfect. You search answers from us to many interesting questions. We do have the answers, but it's too late. Forward in such a speed with technology and industry. You can't think of what happened yesterday, not to mention to look back in time how your ancestors lived a couple of hundreds of years ago. Technology helps you in this moment, but all the speed and ease is just apparent. Everything is an illusion, but you seem to enjoy this virtual world you have created. Everyone creates their own reality, and you have created this illusion you live in. I'd like to say that this is now what you have accomplished. Again, this is not said in a judgmental manner, but how many times does it need to be said for you to understand? You are all part of this world, you and us. We are all one. The universe is one with everything. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer, an engineer, unemployed or a millionaire. You're all one and nothing separates you. If a farmer changes his life, everyone's life changes. If a millionaire changes something, it affects all. Everyone is important and no one is more important than the other. This is the answer to all of your problems, such as poverty, loss of ecosystems, climate change, sickness, greed, famine, and so on. You change towards the wrong direction. You change the wrong things. Some things can't be changed back in your lifetime anymore. You can do many improvements, but you'd need to do this together as well as individuals. Just like us. But you don't see others, only yourselves. This is probably a contradiction to you, but for us, this is fully clear. When one finds what they really want to do and is ready to live a healthy and rich life, then one is also ready to think about the others. When you find each other and keys to your own consciousness, you automatically start to think about the others and others about you. Then you don't feel a need to change anyone else. If there was a time when no bad words were said about anyone or anything, the whole world would be already changed. If you'd understand that there's nothing else but love, you'd live in a full, rich and healthy world. This may sound too simple, but this is how it is. We don't have any formulas or complex solutions. When it's time to leave the earth, we know where we are going and what we have left behind. Nothing more than what we came with. That's it. We are alpacas and you are humans. You're here to learn, and this is one of those teachings. What you give to yourself, you give to others. It's important to know that everything is as it should be. You're in an amazing state, completing the task and challenges that are given to humankind. When the time is right, you'll find all the answers and will understand it. Then you'll see that this was not so complicated after all.
Yes. That was my presentation. Thank you.
Just a moment, please.
I'm not sure if I understood. Was it a fable or what was it? Was it because you did not let? Of course, the alpacas don't speak and are not interested in our stories.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a kind of like a Krylov fable, like a tale for which.
I don't know what is fable really.
Like a tale that maybe the most famous is this Krylov, the Russian, who used the animals like the fox, who used animals to tell like stories.
Yeah, I think it's because it's an automatic writing. So basically, it's a tale, but it also it introduces the idea of telepathy really. I mean, because the things that I practice, for example, they can be words and they can be images or sensations and so on. So I'm just basically I'm mixing with things which are really not scientific. You can't prove in telepathy with science. And of course you can say that alpacas don't talk. But how can you say that really? Like everyone who has a dog knows that their dogs speak a lot to them.
Yeah.
So it's like you just need to kind of position yourself differently in that sense. And also coming from as it said also in this tape, that we are alpacas and you're humans. You come from the human perspective always, but you just need to kind of, how do you position yourself?
Yeah, it's a translation.
Yeah, of course.
But then it's about what is lost and what it's added in translation.
Yeah, but it's the same with anyone.
Yeah, of course, even if two people speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
May I ask I'm not sure either. So So your process, have you lived with them, or how did you go about to
Yes,
telepath with them?
The way that I work is that I always work with the people who I mean I need to know the people who are with them. So then I go and then I'm also living with the alpacas. I have done the same with the horses and so on. So yes,
Okay.
yes, basically that. I mean, I'm not owning them or
No,
like
no.
that, but
No. But you're living with them, observing them, or
yeah,
trying to
yeah, and I'm also
understand their rhythm and.
yeah, yeah. Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm interested in these like mixtures of because there's so many phenomena in the world, in my opinion, which kind of exist to us, but through science and it's really rationalist thinking, we just don't. I mean, then it goes to this whatever self-help and mumbo jumbo and because for some reason we don't really value those things, but if you try to mix these two things together, I'm interested in could it bring something to the discussion. And I'm not saying that we should all go to some pseudo scientific way, but I think we just should somehow start to understand ourselves as an holistic entities in this world, and also what are our relations and position in the ecosystems we live within. Yeah, so.
Okay.
I liked what you say for very beginning, that we should start to look at different beings as not only as resources. I think that's one thing which is problematic in also this circular bioeconomic thinking, that we still think as that mainly others as resources and how we benefit from them. For me, listening this, I would, as you say, it's more like a translation. But I think as a scientist and artist, we observe and we always make our own interpretation of what we see and what we think others think or talk. So I think this was very mind-opening. I noticed that it's really raised questions of what is this? What is this really? Interesting.
Yeah, I think when we are talking about I think the key point is exactly that the only thing that enables us to do this the only thing that really enables us to just continue lavishly exploiting the natural resources, and basically it's not I mean, we are just basically heading to the extinction of our own species. It's not like there will be something left. It's not about that. So we just basically we need to kind of figure out ourselves, like how are we here, and then one of the ways, in my opinion, how to try to learn this from this resource thinking is to relearn empathy. That if you can position yourself in a way that I mean, of course, it's not easy to think of like an alpaca. Well, it's easier with alpaca. Alpaca has an eyes and it's cute, and so it's easier to empathize with an alpaca. But when you start thinking about trees or something that you can't really relate to, because it's also empathy is also biological. So we feel more to the people that we know or have something similar with. So I'm just interested in how can you bring this kind of empathetic experience to a level that would teach us something as human beings here. Out from the
It's
source.
also very centric when we discuss ethics. And in science, it's very typical that you more or less instrumentalized your object. Also, maybe it's sometimes protecting ourselves, not to feeling empathy towards the objective we are studying. I was thinking more like animal and medical eläinlääkintä. What veterinary and all these when you do experiments with animals and.
There was one question before.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, just like to continue from this resource aspect. You mentioned also that like we should be equal with different species, and I somehow like wonder why we should be, or why humans should be equal with other species.
I don't know if we should be equal, but we should imagine to be equal. Because I mean, I understand that you kind of tend to put your species in front of, like, before the other species, in many senses.
But I think like it's not possible. Like right now, like humans are on the top of the food chain, and we haven't been in that position for a long time. If you think of the history, and in practical, for example, if there would be a bear or wolf like coming up in this like yard, like would we think this animal is equal, or
Do you want to
like,
offer yourself like, okay?
I would hide or get a gun.
Yeah, but you don't. Hey man, you don't need to be stupid either.
No, but I'm practical now.
Yeah, I understand, but I really think it's about like how do you belong in the ecosystem you are?
Yeah.
Because I mean, even though we are on the top of the food chain now, we are already seeing that this might change in just very short time because of our own actions. So this is what I mean, that it is really about saving human beings as species.
Yeah, this way of thinking. And also, like, I've been thinking why we are like having this eco catastrophe right now, and it's maybe like there are many theories, but like we have this fear, and we feel insecure, and we try to empower and be dominant and destroy. So like next steps would be maybe like to feel safe and don't have these anxieties towards like other species.
Niitä skuuttereita, niin water scooters.
Yeah, I think you raise a valid point. Like, through science, we've learned to observe the world. We've learned that there's something outside of ourselves. Well, if you track back to way back, when we really needed to be connected with our environment and all the living things in it up on to survive, we needed to understand our environment on a different level to survive. So maybe we need to get back to that. We need to connect with the, not only take a stance back and be the observer or the outside manipulator, or like manipulating the world to our own benefit, but to live in a connectedness.
Another comment. I think this empathy and affection is key here. For you, the alpacas matter. You have a pullover, alpaca pullover, probably.
Sure, I know.
And some of us also, and you know them, and because you have the affection, you are responsible. You feel with them. They matter for you, as like these trees here. They are matter for us Helsinki people. They are kind of important, and that's why we are responsible, and that's why I think we make politics. And scientists also, they have affection to their objects sometimes also not. But I think that's why I think it's the key to have empathy and affection, because from love, empathy and affection comes responsibility, and that's local, and that's different from each person, and the perspectives are very different, and that brings probably us together, because we scientists have affection to these objects we research, and you artists have affection and love and empathy to these objects or organisms also. Maybe it's a connection also.
Yeah, and empathy also enables collaboration. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a moment.
I put it here so you can.
Yeah, I think I have to put it in my pocket or something.
Okay. I'm also going to sit here. It seems like a good spot. Yes. So my name is Tina Maja-Kromatsen. I did a presentation yesterday in the seminar about my work with the Body Interfaces project, and I'm going to continue a little with that a bit in a more like methodological way to how I actually do this, but also to discuss a little bit about these kind of relations to space and location identity that is important when we start to discuss, environments and how to interact with it. But for you who are not there yesterday, Body Interfaces is performance research that I've been doing for the last 2 years, very intensively seeking out locations, both in nature and also in more like urban environments, but started out in nature with me engaging my body as a tool for research and to gather information, as using it as an interface and as a threshold kind of interactive agent that was actually in dialogue with these environments where I did the interventions. And this research, of course, gathers together a lot of different data, and also I also work with these data and kind of recontextualize and kind of starts to analyze the sites where I at. I both do it before, but I also do it after the actual interventions, and also try to then connect them to new spaces and compare these. And so I would say, like, I think it makes sense to, like, we're also sitting here on the island, and then try to actually go into this kind of a little bit of a method about actually how to engage with environments. And so I use a lot of philosophy and a lot of theory to reflect on this, but it's kind of, I go into these kind of using creative practices as a form of thinking, like artistic research method as scenes. And I also yesterday spoke about how I see the body as an excessive body that kind of goes into the environment as well. Like, it's like when we are here, we also breathe in and we breathe out and we breathe in, and we kind of, matter gets mixed in that way. It's not so separable as we might think. So I also come from a more kind of post-human
awareness about how the body can be extended into and in relation to other entities. Not necessarily technology, but I'm seeing the body as a technology in itself. So it's like, for me, that is not, you shouldn't extinct things in that way anymore. I think we should more think about the relations that actually happen in this kind of experience with place. And then this idea of place. I found out that political geography is quite good to use in relation to actually discuss place and also sites, and also see like how the identity of a place actually informs how we live with it and how we use it, and also makes us aware of potential problems that could be, like it could be preserving land as well. Like we also in the beginning of this workshop session, there was also started to put up to this, how can we actually preserve land. So I think going in discussion with the site and then going in to analyze it to actually see this place identity could be quite useful in that way, if to contextualize the practice a little bit in that way. So therefore I took actually with me here a little bit of remedies in terms of what I use when I analyze place. One thing is that I have here and also this kind of the connotations towards actual science. I started to actually also kind of take samples. Oh, they're a bit stuck. I had different types of jars here, and it could be like all types of material that are, we already have them falling down here. You know, it seems there is a lot of plants that are like specific for this. You know, you could take them with you and analyze them. I have a lot of material. I even once did a performance where it was raining in Bergen, and I just put out these, and then I just took and closed the lid, and then just let the air kind of dissolve into the actual thing. So I felt like, okay, then at one point I sealed it, and I thought maybe, of course it gets mixed, but there is potential data inside, even though it's just kind of dissolved water. And then another thing I do is I record. And I record not necessarily me talking about the site, but actually these interactions that happen. And it is like this, the body interfaces is about this kind of direct contact with materials. So this would be, like we have a wooden plank here. So like I would potentially, you know, that this kind of surface tension that comes with, you know, with the arm kind of moving. It's not a lot of sound, but it's still there. Like I can see it here, even, of course now I talk, but even, and sometimes I use these information in other contexts, but also to being aware of frictions and other ways of kind of, this is another way of kind of analyzing specific. And also, like, if it's grass, it's like totally different. It has a little bit more sound, it's a little bit more crisp. So it's like it all becomes a part of these kind of accumulations of different types of data that can give some awareness. And I was sitting here, actually brought some cards. Like I usually note stuff down on like long sheets of paper, and also showed you a script yesterday where I kind of had codified this body interfaces into some sort of scripting sequence. But actually I think, like, we're sitting here now on Batusari Island, yeah, and I actually would like if all of you could write down a few words about what this place, like if we want to kind of think about this place identity of where we are right now. And it can be only both through the experience you have, like with your body being present, like as an interface for this specific experience, both being here together, but also what this place means, because as I understood, it's potentially a little bit in danger of And also I think what these types of interventions can do, like, and what we as artists can do, we can start to make a discussion where about like why is it important through analyzing these identity and actually pointing to these identity characteristics and then in a way creating another narrative and making an importance for the site. So yeah, please do that. I don't have so many pens. It's a bit of mixed with markers and okay, good.
You can take one of these.
No,
So identity of a place. This place.
This specific island, like what is the place identity of what? Sorry.
it's just one word, a couple of words.
And it can be anything. Like it can also be a Finnish word if there's a certain term that makes more sense, that has some specific.
Does it need to be words, or can it also be?
They can be anything.
Like
it can be anything. Yeah.
A mark or
It's just something that, in some way, you can also go out and scrape a texture. That is, I do a lot. Like that is also some way of kind of getting some sort of identity into. Yeah.
Maybe I have one question. What do you mean with identity? I don't get it.
Well, location identity is what kind of makes a place special, but it can be both in terms of, for example, it has some interesting species here. It can be both on political level, like or like depends how. You can also be on an emotional level. In this it's very open. But it's trying to kind of getting so many inputs in to kind of get this space, a voice and an identity to kind of discuss like what is the importance of this specific site. We can also be on a strict kind of, it has like a lot of vegetation, you know, there is a lot of the climate is such and such. It can also be on a very kind of rough data level. It's opened up also to all, or let's say different expertises and different experiences and different backgrounds in that way. So.
We're just gonna give it to you?
Yeah, just put it on here, up here. So, but when you're all done, then I'm also done. And if anyone has any questions, or it's okay. But then we maybe can use these for like when we discuss potentially. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm going to put them out, then we can go and read them a little bit. Yeah. And then if anyone have any questions, you can ask me that as well while I do it. Oh yeah, I ate some of those today.
In my case, I was just thinking about like restoration plans and so forth, that usually it is in office and it starts there, the planning and planning and so forth, and this was kind of a good reminder to, when you are restoring ecosystem, you need to get the whole group into the ecosystem that you are restoring to get a feel about it, and even this kind of practices and somebody to guide through would to get same perspective, or kind of talk about what the ecosystem means to one. But anybody else did some? Yep.
No, it's just whatever random thoughts come to mind. No, but it's just like somehow this idea of the island that you started off with is somehow, like, for me, kind of quite important, that this is obviously an island, and it has its kind of ecosystem, but then what is happening, 10,000 miles away, that is economically connected to this island and to us, is somehow that's something which is outside the island, but it's still part of some ecosystem.
Yeah, it's like a kind of a self-contained entity, but it's kind of has, but it's a part of this bigger whole that, unfortunately, then poses an impact on it.
So you can have this kind of paradise ecosystem, but then that paradise ecosystem obviously depends on non-paradise ecosystems. I don't know, it's always interesting, this idea of islands and containers, because it also relates to like language as this kind of system abstracting into containers, and then somehow also with these alpacas, that they are kind of somehow, they're in herds or not? They're kind of groups of alpacas, no?
Yeah, they are very...
Yeah.
They die if they are...
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're all, also I think that they're a bit like some kind of, they are their own, world or island or something like this. Do you think? So maybe they're not so aware of alpacas that would be in
Yeah. No, I'm just actually thinking that to me this island is urban environment. Like when you were talking about nature and urban, this is actually to me urban.
It is kind of, yes, because it was actually way
we are
more.
in the middle of Helsinki.
It was actually also way more like cultivated than I thought. Like hearing about the concept of it. That's true. It's actually good, at least in between spaces, you know, like where you have some sort of wildlife in the way that you can go pluck berries and you can walk around, but it's still, of course, cultivated. It's not the same as if you go somewhere, you know, like where nobody lives, you know, where there's just everything goes. Then it's a totally different.
And even there you can find plastic.
Even there you can find plastic. Yes, yeah.
Also had some.
No, it was just continuing this entanglement. I mean, even if we don't live there, our living transports to wherever.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's difficult to say that it's not cultivated. Like everything
that's
is
the thing.
cultivated. Yeah,
it is nature culture already.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same with the plastic in the body, right? Like, yeah.
We have about 20 minutes, and before we go for lunch, I think everybody's a bit hungry. But there has been lots of ideas. You had yesterday some questions that weren't kind of taken. Does somebody still want to raise some question about the ethics of science and art, or something else about Vartiosaari and what's going to happen here? Well, anything. Coffee.
Coffee.
You choose.
That's for lunch. Maybe.
Yeah.
I have one question to Gina, actually.
Yeah.
So, why would you like to scientificate your artistic praxis? Why would you like to record? Why would you like, or why do you like to produce data? Why not just say, okay, this is an aesthetic experience. I feel the roughness of the bench or the soil or what you are doing, what you are showing yesterday. Why do you want to record it and make it, externalize it in a way and make it scientific and disconnected to your experience in the moment?
I not at all see it disconnected because I'm very much in the moment, and I think actually it is an aesthetic experience, because aesthetics are many things. I don't say this is science necessarily. Like, this is like the first time I even come in this kind of a science context in it. For me, it's a research, because also even when I started to combine these idea with the body interfaces, and I start to discuss how you can use the body as that, already there you start to want to work with those things that happen. You know, it's not just, for me, I need a little bit more than just, you know, position myself in a landscape and say it looks good. You know, that's for me not satisfying. Like, I need to go a little bit further into material. But the reason why I record is because I feed it into new artistic processes. So for me, it's like an ongoing feedback loop of recontextualization, and that therefore these materials are of course important, and of course the fact also that I think sounds are giving you a lot of information also when they are. Let's say when you don't see the action, like in that sound, like I think it's interesting if you, and I did some installations based on sounds where you might know, where it's like you have an idea there's something the body's interacting with, but you cannot see the action, and that gives a whole other type of information as well. So I like to play around with these kind of the connotations that information also gives when they are kind of recontextualized or kind of disconnected from their visual identity, if that makes sense. So that is why I do these things, because for me that is important. Like it is a little bit more than just, you know, lying around in landscapes and then saying, okay, I relate to it visually. It's about relating to materialities of all kinds, you could say, and in that way. So therefore, that these data are important. If that answered it. Anything else?
Arises. You'd like to say something? To conclude or
Yes, it seems that we have still something, few minutes before we start to move towards the lunch, late lunch, and I think we are quite exhausted already. So maybe not the best time to start to plan the new project.
It's good
but
if you have 15 minutes to plan a new project, you are very efficient. Like now it's very...
yes, that's true. Maybe a glass of wine, and after that we would be like, whoa, very creative. But I don't know how much you know about Vartiosaari and the future plan. I talked to few of you mentioned that the city has decided to build the whole island. The aim is to bring here and build residential area for 15,000 to 20,000 residents here, and they would build a bridge, and they are hoping that there will be a tram coming here. So you could imagine that the whole image and identity of this place would totally destroyed. Despite there have been, of course, environmental impact assessment made and shows that the influence is not critical, but how you can respond to that kind of results, that it doesn't have influence, despite it destroys the whole island. So this is kind of a local political spirit at this moment. There are expectations that the Helsinki will grow quite fast, that there will be 200,000 new citizens in next 20 years. So of course more apartments are needed. But do they really need this island for 15,000 people? It's another question. It has been lots of conflicts going on. So you might be the last artist having this kind of seminar here, because if the plan will start it in next 5 years, I think 10 years, there will be a first buildings start to come up here.
So is it city land?
This is the whole city. In Helsinki, the city owns almost 90% of the land. There are some private and some governmentally owned, but mostly all green spaces are owned by the city. So it makes a master plan and decides where it wants to build.
So basically it's owned by us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are the citizens.
Yeah, exactly.
But who would the housing be for? For, like, is it like commercial or like public housing, or just like?
There will be houses for like rent houses, this socially supported housing, but also very expensive private houses nearby the coast, and so with nice view. So the mixture, it's in politics. It's politics in Helsinki that you mix, that you are not only building expensive houses, but also for socially supported. I don't know what is the English. Social housing. Social housing.
Oh, but the rich get the view, I suppose.
Yeah, the rich get the view.
What will happen to the houses that are already here?
Some of them will maintain but I think I have not really seen the last version, but I know that there are small summer cottages also nearby the sea coast or beach. Some of them will maintain, and also this endangered species. There's one endangered species in this, so the habitat of that species will will saved, but it's a minor if you consider that 20,000 people here with a tram connection to mainland.
Because it's not so big islands in the end. So when you think of it, like when you look at the map, it's really like full of houses. Like I come from a town with they have like 80,000 inhabitants, and it's basically the same amount on this small island. So it's really like there won't be much left of what's here now.
And the sad and or even the ironic is that they are selling this, that this is close to green and this is like nature, experience nature housing types here in Ireland. But for that you have to first destroy the majority of the nature here.
I was thinking of the strategy that we talked about on our way here. Are the endangered species? Like if you would make it spread all over the island?
Well, we have this Siberian flying squirrel in Finland that you try to find its boop shit, and then you can show that okay, we have a serious problem. We have Siberian flying squirrels. It can't be built on that.
It's like a symbol of
and yeah, but it's this. I think it makes you feel very weak when you try to speak about the value of nature, because it's only in this very juridical way of saying that this species in danger is you have to protect that specific species in terms of being Siberian flying squirrel or this vascular plant, but not then you can't be ignoring the rest of the nature which doesn't have a formal value in terms of Finnish law.
And was there not any, like when it is public land you have to include the inhabitants and the neighbors, or somehow you should say, okay, we have these plans, is it okay?
Well, this is because there are no neighbors really, because this is island.
So it's some bureaucrats decided that, or some managers who wanted to make money with it.
This is often the case, I think, that when I'm speaking maybe too much, this was the case also with the 6th nuclear power plant. There were two places that they were considering suitable places to build it, but the other one, and of course you can speculate, but the other one had like permanent inhabitants and a lot of them living there, which would have needed to move. And the other place which they chose, there were also like here summer cottages. So it's much easier to kind of change these kind of lands when there are no
areas occupied by people.
Yeah. I mean, of course, here it has been also. There has been a lot of activism around Vartiosaari and people trying to change this. And actually, another example from Helsinki is Kivinokka. It's not very far from here, but it's Cape. Yeah, it's a Cape, and there's also it's basically summer housing, but there's a lot of that, and it has a long tradition of having these. They are like this very close to each other, small huts, and they used to be owned by the union people. So there was this really a lot of people in the community, and actually city had to back off because they were so active. So yeah, it's funny that you need to live there in the place where you would like to have this kind of.
And one terminology I really hate, in some cases it has been misused, is not in my backyard. Because usually when you start to protect your own environment, especially green spaces, it's another issue if you are against social housing or that. But especially when you start to protect, you have very strong place attachment, you are very connected to place, and you start to protect towards building. then this starts. Okay, you are nimble. You are against development. So how you can protect yourself, or be, like especially in mass media, you are saying you are against the development. You are NIMBY person and selfish. So it's too often to see that it's first it's kind of a. It's good that you are attached to place, that you feel that this is my place and you have a strong connected. But then if you start to protect, it's wrong again.
Yeah, it's vulnerable.
But for, I don't know, maybe for me it would be too difficult to join the project in like a development process in Vartiosaari, because I have been so much against. I don't know, as an artist, could you consider that you do some, at least to make it a little bit better than I don't know. Could you consider that you are part of the process that you have been against? Like building process.
Oh, I hate that. I was once, like 15 years ago, I was very active against the building of a highway in one region in Germany. And it was so terrible because they built this highway to a landscape, and then now you drive this and through this landscape and you have a totally different experience. And for over years, I never went even in that area because I hated to go there. And several years ago, I had to go this highway, and it was a terrible experience to just to fly through this and to see that one village there, and it was completely destroyed. So I can imagine that.
I think it's also really about when you are joined in some activist activities. You are already like really emotionally and all the ways attached, so it's really difficult then to be like, okay, then I just try to not even compromise, but to kind of like, okay, if this is something that like the highway that you can stop, like, okay, do I make it somehow better to someone else, like have a painting there or whatever.
These walls around.
Like, I don't know.
But maybe you can't. I don't know whether you can stop it or not, or at least you can be like a critical voice in that process and ask for proper assessments. As you say, there's this assessment going on, and they can be very bad because they're biased. So you can be like the critical voice in asking for balanced assessment and like a proper basis for decision making. There are politicians who should also be voted for again here. So at least that's what we see in the Danish context. At the moment, or in the moment when there is a public interest and also opposition, then the politicians, they are quite keen on listening. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it's not in or out, maybe it's also like,
But it
asking.
It's happened, these critics, but despite this critics, if this development happens, can you then be a part of this building process? I mean, in making it
as
better.
early as possible, you should be involved. If it's not decided.
Yeah, then of course.
So if
I had something. I guess what I was thinking as well is that there's processes that are inevitable in a way, and of course, like, we can still stop the construction of this island or the development here, but I think the role of an artist in many ways is not always to fight against something, but to perhaps create memories that can preserve a place or an experience, and that's a role that as artists we can take. And this is a physical space and place, but then it could be potentially be transformed into a different kind of existence. And I think the like imagining and the empathy and like things that have came up today are the kind of like key tasks for us to consider, and as well I think like maybe it doesn't matter if this island will disappear in a grand scale of things. It's do not get stuck on things like, but then yeah, it's a complicated way of living.
Yeah. I'll see if I can make this make sense. But I was thinking like, so okay, if 200,000 more people are going to live in Helsinki, where are they going to live? We have lots of migrants who move because they cannot live where they are at the moment, and Finland will probably keep on being livable for quite some time in the future. And then maybe we need to, in a way, perhaps use what anthropologists did. They started to study up instead of studying the ones who were in the colonies or study the others, but they actually started to study up the ones who use a lot of resources. This is a great example. I mean, I've seen those private aeroplanes that are parked next to the summer cottages or summer villas around this island. And I'm like thinking, so how much space do you use in Helsinki? How much space do we need? I mean, the ones who are very resourceful, perhaps we need to try to imagine alternatives for this affluence and excess. And then more can fit in. And yeah, so that's also one way of, I think that interesting things could come out of turning our perspective into those who use a lot of resources.
Thanks. I liked the both comments on it's kind of a fresher also how in which perspective you are looking at things. And for me, I have always admit that I'm very protective on preserving current physical entity as being a nature conservationist. That it needs space, protecting biodiversity or nature. But for humans, it might be even more touchable that you actually preserve memories of the place, not necessarily the physical environment. And I don't know.
I have no idea how this will come out, but something I was thinking about, like when we look at how much resources people use in relation to where they live. I mean, it's been shown that living in a city is much better for the environment, like in the way that with public transport, you know, like a single person doesn't need the car, but you can like transport many more people with the same resources than if you live like far away or outside in the forest and things. So for me, it's always this very difficult thing. I would love to live somewhere far away from everybody else and like have my own place and be there apart from everybody else. But then I know I would need a car. I would need tools. I would need to buy all the things for myself that I need. And here in the city, I can go to the neighbor and I can go like, hey, can you borrow me this? So in a way, I think like moving people to cities is maybe better for the environment. And if I had the chance to decide, if I had a child, then I would have to decide, like, do I want the child to live in a ghetto kind of space where you have only the big houses and then maybe you have 3 trees in between, or that I would have an island. I don't know how the plans are now for Vartiosaari, so this is very dependent on how they are. But when I think of Lauttasaari, where they have preserved a lot of green space, so I would rather live in a place where there's houses, but there's also green space preserved. So in a way that an island like this might make a much better environment to live in than if you take an, I don't know what an alternative space would be, like a field that there's nothing there now, and you just put really many houses. So in a way, this will hopefully become a very good area to live, in a way. So maybe to see a positive side, that if they do it right, if they preserve the right spaces in between houses, that it would be a thing that is nicer to live in than in the usual city environment. I don't know, I don't make myself clear like what I mean, but that maybe we should try to see the positive side, that this will become a very nice place to live in, like Lauttasaari, which is full of people, but it's very quiet, and it's a great place to live. It's a great place to bring up kids if you have them, because it's very safe in a way. And so maybe this island could become the same kind of space. I would be very sad to see this go, because this is an extremely beautiful space. So I'm not saying that go build on every island, but in a way to maybe try and find a positive side in it. That maybe if you have people living in a place where you have lots of green, you can also teach them to appreciate this green much better than if they live in the city center. Somehow, I don't know.
More comments?
Yeah, there was a documentary of an old lady who lived in this island. I read that there are like 20 people like still right now living here permanently, and she was asked like how she feels living here, and she said that like she wouldn't have this like how to say that anyone couldn't live here, or like there were only these 20 people living here, because like the housing, like it's not good for not good as a living space if there is no infra or no water or no electricity, or like, well, she had her like human perspective on living on this island, but I can like really relate to her.
Just a comment that like compensating this kind of island, it's impossible. We started with the compensation and restoration stuff, and this biodiversity that you can find here, there are many places that you will not find, like we talked about the flora and fauna. It's very particular to this place, so if we use this one, it won't be in thousands or hundreds of thousands of years it will take to become this. But yes, as Luna was saying also, that we have these kind of ecosystem hotels also at the moment here in Finland, that you use some kind of land, you take the vegetation and take it to some other place and try to keep it alive, and then take it to another place. This is what's happening at the moment, and in very small, in minimal areas, but yes. But yes, biodiversity is really diminishing, so to live closer and have the resources and kiertotalous and circular, yes, they are what we have been already yesterday talking, and would be more sustainable ideas. Time is for lunch, and we can discuss on lunch, and I think everybody's email addresses are with the main coordinator Anu, so if you want to take contact with somebody later or exchange cards or something, do that please, and have a nice mealtime. Thank you for everybody.